No, not the camera, but we have Plan B. Okay, so that's good. So first of all, I don't know if all of you heard, I'm filming this class A because it's good practice to film when teaching and to get feedback on it. I anticipate giving this tape to some of my peers to see how what they feel about when teaching, and they can give me any pointers. And I also welcome, as I said before, any of your comments and suggestions about, whatever we're doing in class, as well as what it is that what I'm doing pedagogically as a teacher. And I think, I certainly value that. That's an email. But I'm going to say this on the tape. Is it okay for me to film the class today for those purposes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I appreciate it very much. And then another thing that I wanted to ask you to do is this. You are not required to do this. It has no bearing on your grade, etc. But one of the things I'm going to send around the student permission form.
We take a copy.
I'd like to, if you don't choose to do this, either way, I'd like to form that. But one of the things that I am trying to do is I try to do research in and with my courses. And so there may be times that you can look at this and agree to it. You don't have to do it now. You can look at it and bring it in later on. But to agree to share some of your work for some research purposes. And if I have any kind of intent to use your specific work for something like that, I will absolutely tell you and talk with you about what the terms of that are. But in general, I just want you to be research partners with me, as we go forward. And I have nothing specific in mind at the time, but it may be as we go forward that there's something of interest comes up to some of us, or me, or you, etc. And so, thank you. So you can get that back to me. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, thank you. So the third thing is your reflection. And I want to thank you for them. Was anybody able to see my comments in Blackboard?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you post them?
I probably today.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe yesterday.
Okay. I checked yesterday.
Okay, yeah, they may not have been in. You will find I do most of my work really late at night, and that's just how I do it. And so sometimes you don't get them until the end. But I did put them in there. I'd be interested if you think they're helpful. And as I said, I think I said it here last week, that if you're not interested in my comments, let me know and I won't write them. Since it's a lot of time and energy to write them. So if you really are not that interested and it's okay for you not to be, then I'm happy not to. But I do like to write them. And in terms of reflection, it really helps me get a sense of your writing and of your sort of ideation around the concepts that we're learning here. And for me also to get a sense of who you are and where you are relative to this class and your future. So that was really good. And I made some specific comments to people about things that I might suggest to them if they indicate a certain interest for which I had some suggestions, etc. And so on. So that is going to be a kind of a dialogue, and I hope that helps. Next week we are going to meet in the June library. We're going to go on a field trip to go see June Chen.
Do you want us to immediately after that class, we will go directly
Yes.
to the library? Okay.
Here we go. I actually have this on me. Yes, go immediately after Dr. Dixie's class. Do not pass go. And I think you should not bring food next week then. There's no food in the library. Okay? And what we're going to do is June is wonderful, and she's very helpful. And what we're going to do is first on Blackboard, I've put on links to tutorials that you can view at your own leisure. And that's tutorial about how to use some of the library resources, etc. And there are also other tutorials on the Julie Library website if you look in the reference section, etc. And I really encourage you to avail yourself of those because they're fantastic. But what we're going to do with June is that I'm going to
sign your stuff signed in.
Where the setup show probably. You can go to.
Hand flies mandate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So,
Is anybody selling Boy Scout cookies?
I know someone who is.
Yes, no, my daughter is, and one of the cookies is called Thank You Very Much.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so funny.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And so now whenever I hear thank you very much, I think thank you very much. But anyway, so Julie Library with June, and so we're going to do a web quest. And so what that means is that I'll provide you with sort of a set of, conditions in which we're supposed to search for things, and it's going to advance our knowledge of policy in the Connecticut space particularly. And we'll be there all together on our own computers, and we'll be able to help each other. So it should be kind of a fun session. Laptops. I don't know, who brings laptops here? Everybody? A lot of, oh my gosh.
You need to be on for here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's great, because what I was going to say is that it's useful sometimes. I'd like you to do some, online activities together in groups and so forth. So good, we'll be able to do that. Wonderful, yes.
I don't know, I'm trying to get on. I spent most of the last time trying to get on.
Yeah, there are some issues. You have to call the help desk, because sometimes there are, I don't know whether it's firewall issues or the like, but, it takes, and there's something about, you have a PC? Yeah, there's something about PCs, too, that if you open them and close them, does anybody experience that?
You know what, you staff at, the technology department, I was in there for 2 minutes with my iPad. I was able to get this to work, but, just something that got off in 2 seconds. It's the firewall or something.
That is it's best to just walk to them. So
Yeah.
after we let her know where it is and everything. Okay.
It's in the library.
Okay.
no, it's right next to the,
First of all,
EDL
if you would be so kind to go around and tell me your names once again, because I've got some good sense about some of them, and others I'm not so sure. So why don't we start with you?
I'm Karen Mullen.
Karen.
Kim.
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 Ann.
Joe.
Joan. Melissa.
Denise.
Denise. Steve.
Lloyd.
I know you. Okay.
Oh, Courtney.
Courtney, because I know you too. Yes.
Tony.
Right. And then we'll start with you, Steve. With your Steve.
Carla.
Hi, Carla.
Diane.
Lori. And we have Ann. Okay. I'm Sasha. Okay. So, how did the content brief go in your mind?
Ooh, I got going.
I thought taking it, maybe some of the wording, taking 100 pages and bringing it down to, I didn't agree. But that was just because I thought there was so much.
Yeah.
So hard to choose which, right? It's hard to know what to put in.
I compared Anderson and the book and, found commonalities and things that they talked about regarding it, but it couldn't go into a lot of detail. And that was it's like a glorified summary, I think, and that's where coming from last semester, this one, that's it, I went to content. Yeah. Like I even Googled content brief online because you didn't really give an exact.
I didn't give a
and that wasn't very helpful either, so I'm just going to summarize.
Say yes.
And even things like, sorry.
Go ahead, you're talking.
Okay. Even like format double space versus single space, I was like, okay, well, that makes a huge difference as to how much we.
Okay, so we're working out, the expectations, and everybody wants to do good and do well, so we just don't know, what should we do? Okay, yeah.
I actually liked it. I was hard to start, but I actually liked it better than some of the things we had to do last time. You know, we had to do that table of comparing. It really forced me to go back and forth between the two of them. Yeah. And also looking at the table of contents and saying, okay, so what is this?
Right.
And I kept going back to the title of the book.
Yes.
To make sure that wasn't digressing.
Yes.
From what you were specifically asking.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff in there, but not necessarily. But I liked it. Whether I did it right or not,
didn't want to just essentially copy.
Right.
You know, and that was the issue. You know, it's certainly you're not providing analysis, but it's about synthesizing the two pieces without just blatantly, you know, ripping it off, without blatantly just plagiarizing the pieces. I kind of wanted to, I don't know if I was specific enough in terms of delineating the policies, or, you know, the models and so forth. Rather, I was more focused on the reasons behind them.
Okay. Okay. Now that's an interesting point. So, you know, who's the there's a question, who's the content brief for? Is it for you? Is it for me? Who's it for? So you chose in yours to talk more about sort of the rationale behind, the underpinning. And that's what you wanted to do for you. And so that's fine. And so, you know, we just want to be sure about what the intent is for the assignment. So there's nothing wrong with that. The content brief is about you pulling together what's important for you. So that's good. Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that it was for me, for my purposes. So that was me at ease too.
Right.
Because I said, okay, what's important for me to know here? So I didn't have to get as specific with things that I already had an understanding with.
Right.
Or if I read the book, well, I did read the book. But when I read the book, if I grasped it, I was much more brief than something that I didn't.
Right. Okay. Because it was for you kind of what you
Right.
needed to.
I figure I'm going to make reference to this later. I need to know what this means.
Okay. Good. Now I saw Michelle and then over here.
I think I had somewhat of a little bit of what you had. I felt like after driving,
Yeah.
felt like I was basically citing some things information. And then I found that even though I really wasn't sure what I was doing, I actually created another file the way I wanted it to be. So I don't really know if I just duplicated the effort. I'm kind of getting confused. And I felt like, you know, I did the content brief for you. And I have my own study guide for me.
Okay.
So I really don't really know. I'm interested now to hear your feedback.
Okay.
I can't wait to read it because I just felt like I got lost. I kept going back to the precinct we had, stayed away from that policy because it was too much. And so I just started, after a while, and I read both of them, I just started.
Okay. And you know, is it okay for you to be getting confused? Yes. Have you ever done it before? No. And we're trying to find our way through this. And so one of the things that you just said that you did was you said, look, I've got my study guide, and then there's the content brief. And one of the points of these exercises is to help you develop techniques for analyzing and synthesizing information. I mean, has anybody ever asked you to do this before? And I'm really surprised, because these are, I think, very basic kinds of strategies for identifying clear information, putting it into some kind of format that's useful for you, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that you have a study guide and you have, you know, the content brief, et cetera. So the study guide, I'll bet, is more like just, you know, just the facts, man. And then the content brief is a little bit more analytic and interactive. That's good. So now you've got a large spreadsheet and the content brief. I'm going to talk Kim and then Karen.
Well, I actually, now looking, I didn't really like doing it per se, but now looking back at it, it's kind of comforting knowing that you split those 100 pages into such a small amount. But for me, I think, like, and I have no idea if I did it right or not, but it was very, like, definition-based. So that for me, I can look at my content brief and be like, okay, these are 6 pages of cycle. Right. And then if I need more information on it, I know I can go back to the book and look at it, but I didn't necessarily explain each page in particular.
Right.
And I don't know if that is right or not, but that is kind of the way I took it because I wanted to get in big topics that I didn't know.
You want a guide. You want a guide?
Yeah, I guess it was more of a guide of the study pages more than like a synthesis, I guess.
Okay. That's okay. Good.
I think mine sounds similar to kind of what you did, and I found that probably because I never had to do it before, be very frustrating because I didn't feel like I was writing. I was very frustrated because it was like I'm not doing anything with this information, and I wanted to critique it or analyze it, compare the two sources or think
so you
about
wanted more freedom of movement.
Yes, and it was very frustrating.
Really frustrating.
Yeah. I only do my notebook once though.
Good, good.
The answer is
Right, she's a hothead, okay.
I am.
And then Sophie, and then Lori.
I also noticed that I like one text better than the other.
Okay.
A little bit more. It's funny because we thought we like the opposite text better, so. But it's just, that also, like I read the first one, I'm like, all right, I liked it, and then start reading the second one, I'm like, yeah, and that's for another.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Somi, and then Courtney, and then Joe.
When I started reading
Wait,
Anderson,
Somi first.
oh,
Sorry.
It wasn't that difficult, but the thing that really helped me was, you know, since you mentioned it doesn't have to be an APA format. So, you know, reducing the, you know, I didn't have to choose, you know, the lines between lines and all those things. So I could see that
So you had more freedom. Darren felt straitjacketed, and you felt a little bit more.
I felt like it was elaborated.
Right.
But on translation, I see the comment saying, oh, maybe this is not good enough. So, and I would know.
You think that I'll tell you it's not good enough?
You would never.
You could elaborate, or
Very nice
that's it. Yes, I will, in a pointed, clear fashion. Courtney.
well, listening to other people talk, I thought maybe I was reading stuff wrong because it sounded the same to me with Anderson and text. It sounded like they're repeating themselves. That's what I thought. And so I thought maybe I had printed out the wrong copy or something, but I don't know. I tried to sum it up as best I can. But I think I'll play off of it.
Well, you never know. I mean, and I do think so. You know, they're saying the same thing. I mean, in many cases, we're talking about very general notions and concepts around, you know, what is policy study. So we have some pretty much, you know, widely accepted conventional knowledge about these things, and that's what we have. So, so there's likely going to be many things that are the same, and then the different authors are going to do things differently or highlight different things. So, you know, I mean, it's not that creative a process on the one hand. On the other hand, you can get, I don't know, after a while, and maybe it's just a big nerd alert, you know, I mean, you can just get really excited about, oh, I'm doing a great job at kind of characterizing this stuff for myself. Okay, one of the other things you had said something about, well, I felt like I was just copying it. You know, I didn't know if I was plagiarizing it or not. And this is tough right now at the very beginning with the briefs and the prases, etc. You can use the words from the text, but you got to put it in quotes and put a citation. And so you'll catch me, right? And I'll say to you, you plagiarized, or you know, you need to revise and resubmit because I know these are not your words. And if that's the case, I'm not saying you're a bad person. I just want you to revise and resubmit. There are other people, you know, what you have to be careful of, there are people who will like take it out, you know, to the end of the world and the whole big thing. And I don't think that's it. You're learning how to do this, you're learning how to write, you're learning how to understand which parts are which. So just, you know, if you want to put a quote in because it's a good quote and says everything you want to say, go ahead. So I want you to link 8 million quotes from the book so that, you know, all it is, and as Anderson says, no, I do want you to try and synthesize with your own words. Laura, yeah, you know.
I just wanted to add, the highlight Courtney thought that they were similar in nature, so I took comfort in that I was getting the right, you know, basic definition from it, but I didn't know if it would be okay to take the liberty, like one office said there were 6 steps and one said they were 4.
Absolutely, it is okay to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, you can do that too. And you can also do, you know, you can say, I'm going to squish them, because, you know, I don't see the utility in this last category. You know what I'm saying? So you can also do that. Now, that's a little bit more opinion oriented, but the thing is that if it's your brief for your purposes, you might want to remind yourself that so and so has this extra category, but you don't think it's that useful, so that's why you put it in here. So I feel like you did okay. Proof's in the pudding. Yes.
Like, in mine, and I'm not sure, it was more for me, and I don't think it's proper to create APA format, but I wanted to put the page numbers next to my quotes so that when I refer back to them. So is that okay?
I think that's okay. I don't think did I specify you needed to do it in APA style in the content?
No,
range?
I just
good practice.
Okay.
I think that's a good practice, then you know where they are and you can easily refer to them.
We didn't do that in the beginning.
Right.
I know you're right.
So partly, yeah, it's partly, good, so you will develop your own practices, right? And that's partly why I didn't want to provide, a model, because one of the things that we tend to do is we tend to just want to, follow the model. Here's the rubric, this is what we're supposed to do. And I want you to think more independently. I really want you to think independently, but at the same time I want you to develop good skills around, like finding information, synthesizing information, somehow cataloging it, making it useful. Any last comments on this one? Yeah.
The word synthesize, I don't know how.
What does that mean?
Yes, you just say it in English.
Yeah. I will.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So when you synthesize something, you put it together, right? So, and when you analyze something, a lot of times that means to pull it apart. So when they talk about now these are imperfect terms, because when you analyze things, a lot of times you analyze them in relation to one another, and your analysis can be a synthesis. So I would say that analysis is a sort of a broader term, but to synthesize something is to somehow put it together. Does that help? To kind of put ideas together, concepts together, to make some kind of sense out of it. Anybody have a different definition that might? Good. What's next? Oh, this is what, okay. So now to what is policy studies? Let's think about, turn your head to the table of contents that we looked at and the 2 chapters that you read. And I know it was a lot of reading. How did you do on the reading? Was that way too much reading?
I think the book for me was more interesting than the article. I was able to get around the book and understand it out of the book than I did the article.
Okay. Okay. So you,
I took naps in between, it was like reading long when you don't know.
but you will come
I love it though.
Oh, yes you do. Yes you do. That's the right thing to say. Oh, how I love policy studies.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay. So I'm going to just lecture sort of a little bit with this, just to get us going, and then we'll all join in. So what is policy and what are policy studies? Right? And so we talk about different things. Policy, we want to learn about definitions, okay, related to policy. Is there one light we should turn on so that we can figure that out? Or Tim, can you figure that out? Sure. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, that was good, right? See, perfect. See, you're expert. Okay, and then there's a context of policy, right? So policy context is sort of a broader area in which policy exists. And we'll talk more specifically about these things. People talk about the purposes of policy. What policy, so definitions, what policy is, and then there's the purposes. What policy does? Approaches to policy and policy studies. So how do we do it? More of a how. And then the tools, which is sort of perhaps a subset of the how, is what methods. So what are the tools? Okay, we can go back there. So, anybody have any questions about these being sort of portions of what policy studies is and what policy is? No. Okay. And we can leave it at this. So let's talk about this table of contents exercise, right? The first class last week, I asked you to just look at the table of contents of these various policy sections. 3 very different policy sections, right? And when you look at the table of contents, just tell me a little bit about your general impressions. What did you see? What did you notice about one of them singly or all of them together? they all talk about policy study, policy study, that concept, okay? And we'll talk about that, the difference kind of between policy and policy study.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so a lot of the same categories, a lot of the same buckets. These desks are really
They are awesome. And coming from work, too much.
big.
More or less, they also delineate policy as a process, the study of and the actual application, and they certainly synthesize that in context. Policy is not just a thing, but it's a process, and the table of contents shows this broad perspective of what policy is, and certainly, from the reading, it can't be summed up in just simple terms by any means.
Right, because and the thing is about these processes, whatever they are, the definitions, the processes, the tools, the approaches, in each one, you have different models, you have different aspects, et cetera. So it's really, it's a very complex nested set of concepts and processes, et cetera. Tell me your name again. Denise, okay.
And piggybacking off what Steve said, it's also, they really focus on the dynamics of policy and the fact that it's not just this conveyor belt model, but it is a process, it can be cyclical, but it's also a big focus on the actors, the people that are carrying it through, and the activities that they are doing while doing policy.
Right.
So that human element was big, I think, in a lot of the concepts of it.
Right, because policy is very dynamic.
And a lot of times we think of policy as, it's a piece of legislature, and it's really behind it, it's not.
Right.
A piece of it, maybe.
That's true. Yes, that is. Law and legislation is one policy mechanism.
Yeah.
Carla.
They start out real broad, the definitions, they got more specific in specific areas like education or government, whatever it may be. You got like a basis of information and then more specific.
Right. And that's interesting because what we're doing here, Carla, I can't see you. Bothers me. So
Okay.
we've got to do something.
Let me in here.
Select your, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, but now I can't do it with my camera. Lori, what are you going to do with me?
I'm gonna go here.
All right, let's see. Will that work for you, Michelle?
I don't know.
Yep.
That way.
We're good. Thank you, because it bothers me that when I can't see somebody. So yes, you're absolutely right. That in these texts, and these are of course, introductory and survey texts. So they're trying to give you a broad basis and then bring it more specifically to different policy areas. Health policy, defense policy. Okay, other thoughts? All right. So let me just do my next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about it. Anderson, he talks about approaches, methods, the actors and the environment, policy formation, agenda setting, policy adoption, which is kind of decision making, talks about fiscal policy and the budget process, policy implementation, and policy impact, and evaluation is one of the ways that you're looking at impact. In Cochrane wanted to talk about categories, models, kind of stages of policy, and talking about very much the context of policy, the sort of policy environment. And the context I thought was interesting in Cochrane, where Cochrane's talking about intergovernmental context. Okay, so these are intergovernmental sort of agencies and organizational spaces. And then talking about economic context of policy, demographic context of policy, ideological context of policy, and cultural context of policy. Now, I'm just listing all of this stuff off, and we'll talk about these more in depth going forward, but just to give sort of an idea of the overview, and that's why I want you to be looking at the table of contents, just high level headings that people are talking about. They're trying to give you the whole picture, right? Cochrane also talks about the economy as a context, where you have economic issues like taxing, budgeting, and spending, and then all of these other areas, just like you suggested, Carla: energy, environment, crime and social control, income support, healthcare, education, legal issues, and so on, education, immigration, foreign policy, defense policy. I can't read my writing policy. Sort of private policies, morality policies. Okay. Now Fowler is very specifically educationally focused, and that book is old. I think it's 1984. No, it's got to be sooner than that. But it's very interesting because I think she does a really great job of laying out the policy context, actors, etc., as it pertains specifically to education, right? So she talks about, initially she sets the context of the educational policy context. And she says, she gives you definitions about policy, but also we've had a transformation of our education policy environment. And we will read Fowler a little later on to get a sense of what she's talking about, what's changed. She talks about process and about the importance and the activities of school leaders within the policy process. And then she devotes a huge amount to her book of time to power, which none of the other table of contents talk about. And I think that's interesting. Bracket of power. Talk about that in a little bit too. She talks about the policy environment being the economy, demographics, and business, the political system, culture. She talks about values and ideology as part of this these environmental elements. And then she talks about the policy actors. She talks about legislators, executives and executive branch, judges, the judicial branch, and then local policy. So all of that, the government actors. But then she talks about NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and that they too are policy actors. She talks about the media as an important policy actor. And then she gets into, sort of the policy process, problem definition, agenda setting, the various stages of formulation and policy adoption, analysis and the effective policy instruments, implementation, so evaluation, implementation has to do with research and mobilization of the actual policies, and then the policy impact and evaluation at the very end. And one of the things that I think, here in Connecticut, I work sometimes, this thing just beeps, so I don't know, does that mean it's full, Tony? Battery low. Oh. Let it be low. I worked up at the State Department of Education, and with the Board of Department of Higher Education, now it's the Board of Regents, with the P20 Council. And one of the things that, I hear over and over, we need to have much better evaluation that provides policy information. How can we do evaluations of our schools, of our programs, of our policies, so that we can understand what the policy implications are? So I just went through, these were like the big categories in the table of contents. Any other comments or thoughts about, what these elements are? What you thought they were? After looking at all of that, are you getting a better picture? Okay. What's the difference between policy and policy study? Somebody take a stab at it.
Policy, I thought, is kind of like the process of how you go about doing it, and the study of it is how they can look for holes so that you can't block the system, or even the answers or by the answers.
Okay. So what are you looking at when you're doing policy studies?
You're analyzing
talking very much about being analytic about the policy process as its implementation going forward. Okay, that's one level where you're doing programmatic looking at the policy.
Sure. No.
Sure. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
And
then we'll go to you.
Well, as Lori was talking, I was kind of looking back at my notes, and I kind of separated ideas that I pulled from Stuart on his idea of the process of policy versus his idea of the process of policy analysis. So thinking about, I just said that policy analysis is explanation, not prescription. So yielding knowledge for the process and producing knowledge about the process. So thinking about the policy and giving yourself more information to lead toward policy or thinking about new policy or better policy than before. And then when you're thinking about new policies, the kind of series of processes that lead to the formulation or implementation.
Right. And so in the first part, the policy studies, as well, you can be analyzing the policy process, and you can also be analyzing the process of analyzing the policy process.
Exactly.
Joan, and then Michelle.
Well, I'm a little confused still on the difference between policy analysis and policy study.
Okay. Policy analysis is a subset of policy study. Does that, would you buy it? Was it Michelle?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I wasn't sure if policy study could be analyzing how to make policy better.
Policy study typically analyzes, policy analysis is typically what is, when you're looking and analyzing and looking at studying the policy to make the particular policy better. And policy analysis is a specific policy-focused policy study process.
All right, so I'm just find some part.
It's just, one is a little bit more focused on applied policy. The policy analysis, your study of the applied policy, whereas policy study is more like above. You're an eagle at 10,000 feet looking at, okay, what's the policy study? What is the full policy process? Let's study that whole process.
So is policy study about policy as a concept, where policy analysis is a specific policy?
More at, yes, that's right. More at, yep.
That's exactly the way that I was thinking about it. Like when you think about like studying philosophy, you have like policy capital P or policy lowercase p. Then you have the study of policy capital P, concept of policy, construct of policy.
Right.
In its entirety or in its specific, or the interaction of the two. And then policy analysis, little p.
Policy is little p. Okay, good. Is it getting clearer?
Yes. I think policy studies will be a way of studying different types of policies, which will be a way to feed policymakers to show, for example, if policy students analyze the way the American legislators came up with policies during the 20 years, the last 20 years, they will find out maybe they focus on this particular area of society, or they actually work on the left side talking about politics, or they, so for me it's kind of general. It's looking over everything that is related to policy.
Yes.
And then policy analysis will be just one policy, and you dissect the different parts of the policy, how it was set up, how it was implemented, and so on.
It can be more than one. It can be comparative, but the idea is more like it's a apply policy and you're trying to decide, is this one better, is that one better, et cetera, you know, where you're looking at the specific policy. Okay, I think we're getting it. So, tell me. Before we go. So now, enough of the table of contents, because this gave you an overview of what policy is and what policy studies are, including subset policy analysis. Is there, share with me, if any of you have this, what struck you or excited you, or what something that you found very interesting in the reading about what you, tell me your name again. Diane.
And I've always looked at policy as, you know, this is what it is, and, you know, whatever the process is. But I was surprised at how careful, like with anything, a human approach to it. What are their interests? What are their values? Do they have a preference to a certain kind of approach to something where they tend to use that more often? And I just found that interesting because I always looked at it as being real or honest or whatever this policy is for the best of everybody,
Right.
when maybe those aren't necessarily the intention.
And actually, Courtney, that gets into your reflection, where, you know, and you said this last time in class, where, you know, sometimes you wonder, why is it that the policies are not helping, you know, and so there are policies that are not necessarily well intentioned. Yes, go ahead. It was Sonia, I'm sorry.
Oh, I could connect it in the sense, you know, I teach biology. I could connect it as a scientific method. Okay, there's a problem, and you have variables, and how do you fix it? And if there's something wrong, go ahead and try to tweak it or whatever. You know, it just, I really liked it.
Makes sense to you.
It makes sense to me.
And actually, you raise a really important point, which is that the way that we look at policy at this moment is that, I mean, it is out of social science, based on the scientific method, where we are trying to rationalize, make rational our social interactions and activities, our organizations, our institutions, right? So, so that process is intentionally scientific. And there, in fact, if you look at the history of policy and policy studies, there was a period of time when it became much more scientized and much more rational in this way. But we are not going to really get into that in this class unless people want to do that. Okay. Yes.
So preface, I'm a totally visual person. I like to come up with my own examples for what I imagine things to be like. So as I was reading it, particularly when Stuart was talking about different kind of political cultures and agenda setting and the actors and different things and kind of the cycle of how things kind of get evaluated and terminated and kind of come around, I was thinking about how, what's something that you don't even realize is going to affect something that ends up affecting it and you can actually fix it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about how poison ivy, if it's next to a river or a
Okay,
lake.
we're going to follow you here.
I know,
Okay.
follow it. And the leaves dip into the water,
Right.
then the poison, the oil, can drip through the water and then get you, even if you're all the way downstream. And then you can get poison ivy, you're nowhere near the plant. So I was just thinking about this plant, this idea, this agenda, and where it is. And then you have all these other layers and circles around it, and how it ends up impacting these different areas. And who knows how long that cycle takes to go through to actually realize and evaluate and decide, did I accomplish the agenda, or, am I affecting what I'm meant to be affecting in a positive or negative way, and does it need to be reevaluated? And how long does that process take, or how many people are affected by it, or what areas are affected by it?
Or where are the leaks?
Exactly. And what can't you kind of take back? Or what do you have to then put in place to counteract the damage or benefits or whatever it is that you kind of
And you start to think, I mean, it's really, what is it, a Rube Goldberg? Is that what it is? When you put together these really...
Like the toothbrush hits the ball and
Yeah.
goes through the chute.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very complicated in that way.
I think kind of off of what Aaron said, I not
Way off.
leaves, but they talked about the reoccurring policies and the zigzag pattern that can be, and I find that to be so totally on point with what happens in public schools. more experienced teachers in our building saying, Mira, you tried that 20 years ago, and now we're back doing it again. And it's exactly what they're saying here in policy. They're saying it goes from liberal, and then 30 years later it's conservative again, and then it goes back to liberal, and it's just like us in the school saying, formative assessment, nope, now summative assessment, nope, now try formative assessment again, and they keep telling you what to do, and it's this big cycle that nobody really knows where to jump out or where to try something new, and it keeps coming back.
And that is true, and that, we talk about the pendulum swinging, swinging back and forth, and it tends to, and it tends to in 30-year cycles for whatever reason. So, it is true, and it is iterative, and I don't know why that happens. But it's something that you can actually sort of know on one level, that idea, well, if you look at history repeats itself, so, we can anticipate, then you will come back. So what do we do in anticipation of that?
I thought it was a great analogy, and it's true. And the thing is about, and the poison ivy, is that policy is set up at times, and certainly confirmed through the reading of the ubiquitous nature of this. It's everywhere. It is the tool that we have, and at times those tools are used where they actually do set up, or one actually does set up this poison ivy plant by the river purposely, but for short-term goals. And without clarification or understanding about how it actually is going to flow down the river and domino affect a bunch of other aspects. We live in a world where we of short-term wins and fleeting memory of why we did something in the life. And it's incredible to see how policy, again, it drives everything, and sometimes, again, as the reading delineates, certainly just to get it on the books without any semblance of rationalizing of how it's going to turn out in the long term.
And sometimes we don't know. That's the other thing.
But without any regard to it,
without,
and common sense plays in a part in it too.
Well, and common sense, but also, some of these policies are very, very well researched. But one of the things people are mentioning here is ideology and power. And, where do you go to get the research that you want so that your policies go?
Look, isn't policy is power? That's anybody in a power structure. That's what they use, essentially. One form of, but let's face it, it's again, and I don't know if I've done it from last week, I forgot, but it's one of those things where, formative, the summative, the this, that, whatever else. Here's the thing, once it becomes policy, your opinion's irrelevant. Because it's policy.
Policies are interpreted by different people. It's different.
When it comes down to, I'm saying, very specific aspects of policy, you have policy passed by a board of ed, your opinion about it as an employee is irrelevant. You need to follow the policy, and it's up to the organization to evaluate you on how you meet those standards of the policy.
One problem with policies is that the wording is so often, even the board of ed policies can be interpreted by different people, which is why different buildings in the same district operate very differently, even though they all operate under the same policy.
That's a vacuum of the power structure in the organization.
They do that on the purpose.
Exactly. But that's, when there's ambiguity in policy, that's a vacuum that exists within the leadership of the organization. But when it comes down to it, that interpretation, again, is the means by which you're going to be evaluated. And so, you hear it all the time, at least where I am, and so forth. Well, and again, my dealings are more with principals. When principals have issues with the goals on this, I'll take the number one policy piece in the district improvement plan, the policy. Once the board passes it, becomes policy. There's regardless of whether people agree with its implementation or what the action steps it pertains, it doesn't matter. That's how you're evaluated. You don't like it, go somewhere else.
But let me ask you this. Just because a policy passes and it is the policy, like it goes somewhere else, does that mean that every aspect of it really should be implemented?
No,
or-
but in the end, what it comes down to is once a Board of Ed passes it, and that becomes policy, and that again is the means by which you're evaluated in some degree. It depends what the policy is, of course.
Right.
But again, I've been around the Board of Ed and so forth for far too long to think that policy isn't used to manipulate political agendas and the like, and also basically represent a specific power source within the organization. Let's face it, you're in with us, and I don't mean to, sound too cynical or the like, but once something, if certain groups get in with the parts of the Board of Ed, or depends which subcommittees and the like and so forth, it's all a power play. Essentially, that's the tools one uses.
And the thing is that when we talk about power plays, and I don't know where we get this, but we think it's we talk about it like it's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, the power play is what it's about.
Absolutely.
It's what it's about. And so then the question is, how do you power play?
That's right.
How do you power play? And so we talk about, it's all politics. Well, it is all politics.
Sure.
And the question has to do then with, okay, well, how do you do your politics? What's the point of your politics? Where are you going to be? And we're talking about, advocating for creating mechanisms and policies for what it is that you want to do and what you think is right. And then, of course, the policies have a broader, it's not just a policy about you, it's a policy about a community, society, something bigger than you are. And so, how is it that you do what you want done?
Look,
You make your power play.
I've literally been told point blank, listen, you want it done, and by a Board of Ed president or the like or so forth, you want it done, write the policy, I'll pass it.
Sure.
Done.
Right. And this is getting more, and we'll talk more about that in terms of the actual policies and that policy formation process. I mean, what you're talking about is that, the agenda, the problem identification, the agenda setting, and policy formation. Policy formation gets to the Board of Ed, there's passage, it gets to the legislature, there's passage, and then you move into the implementation.
That's right.
And, and at each stage, power, broadness, all kinds of
Then that, I'm sorry, just one last, then that implementation is clearly defined by the power source. And,
well, you have power,
within,
you have power at every stage.
yeah.
So there are different sources of power at different stages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So let's see, 1, 2, and then there was someone over here, no?
During the implementation, I think the power can also shift. If, for example, the Board of Education adopts a policy that does now work with the teachers union, they can oppose it, and there will be negotiations, and
Depends on the board.
yeah,
Depends how willing the board is willing to negotiate. New Haven, where you are, it's a little different scene than other Board of Eds and the like. I mean, there could be Board of Eds that sit there and look at the executive leadership of the union and say, policy, stop the conversation now. That's how you're evaluated. It depends where one is.
Yeah, that has so much to do with the actors.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting just from my experience, and it's kind of underplayed in it, but the agenda setting, I know, is a huge power play. In my small town, most people don't even realize that the difference between the head of the Board of Education and the other Board of Education members is that head of the Board of Education says yes.
Right.
End of discussion. It's a one person.
It can be, yeah.
I mean, it's written that way that if you want to utilize his or her, utilize their power that way, that they can do that.
And that's why it's so interesting, I think, for people who are new into policy, is that they don't really understand that it really is, and you'll see more and more, it is such a dynamic social process that really that really rests on the shoulders of individual human beings who either do or don't go forward with, their particular agenda and desires. And they go forward individually, they go forward collectively, that there's a whole sort of a searching, process for, hey, if I have an agenda, if I have something that I want to make happen, how do I make it happen? So think about the 99%, okay, all of these protests that are going on right now. What is happening? What is that really? Okay. What are these people talking about? What do they want? What are they doing?
Hold people accountable for the policy.
Here, before you go, Courtney wants to know what protest.
The 99.
Yeah, we're the 99%. All of the
Occupy
okay.
Occupy Union.
So Occupy, yeah, the Occupy Wall Street are there sort of regular people who are saying, they're occupying Wall Street by camping out in parks and doing all kinds of protests in financial districts and in public places to say, Wall Street is the 1% and they've wreaked all this havoc on our economy and in our policy, the policies around Wall Street in part need to be changed. And we're the 99% people who are working hard, doing good, supporting Wall Street, et cetera, and you're not listening to us. Wall Street's got a favored ear, perhaps. Is that a good characteristic?
Well, and we worked as hard and we can get to this level, and you worked as hard and we can get to this level. And so why
Where's
is there
the equity in that?
where's the equity? Why is there a discrepancy? And there's no
translucent at all.
there's no cap to things.
Okay, so Stephen was going to say something.
Oh,
So what are they trying to do?
Same thing as what Darren noted. I mean, it's just economic disparity, and they want to change. It's essentially an attack on policies which have led to this, wide gap in our country's economic structure.
So what kind of policies are they really redistributive policies? They want to talk about how that takes. Also distributive policies to some extent. I mean, certainly they're leaning more toward a notion of, I always hate to say a socialist notion because it's all up in our socialism, but the idea that it is, but are they talking about educational policy? No, not really. It's economic policy primarily, legal policy. So they're trying to apply pressure, and that's one way. And they are applying pressure. And the media got involved. The media started to take notice of them and do that. Started applying pressure in a different way. And so, there are all different kinds of things that can take place. Other things that struck you in the reading of the chapter, things that made you say sort of aha or wow or
Anything that you want to make big changes, you have to get out of the classroom.
how get out of the classroom and go where? Do what?
I don't know what, but if you want to make bigger changes, you have to start looking bigger than just your 25 kids.
Right. And that's a philosophical change for a person, right? Because there are many of us who say, I choose to make change in my world, a person at a time, through my personal relationships, in my classrooms and with my family, etc. And there are different ways. I mean, you'll see teachers of the year maybe who have a particular agenda. I mean, I'm thinking that there's a teacher of the year whose agenda this year is, I think it's anti-bullying, which would go along with the legislative agenda, et cetera. But this, so you can take your particular status and turn it into kind of an activist post, say, or you can have your classroom do some kind of environmental study or something, and then all of a sudden you are out of your classroom in a kind of a more popular way or media-based way. Okay,
at a very rudimentary level, I read through policy, or, you know, all the terminology, I mean, even down to the ideas of like private goods and collective goods.
Yeah.
Oh, there is policy where we can't deny certain things to people, and other things need to be divided and sold, and some people are, privileged to things and some people aren't. And I mean, instead of at a very basic level, realizing how everything around us is in some way based on some sort and type and system of policy, that I mean, reading it, I realized, but never before that really thought about.
Yeah, I mean, and I love things like this. You know, Anderson says policy is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? So, you know that thing that happens to you when you're going to sit down and you go to sit down and the chair is too low? That's because there is a standard, which in some cases is a policy, that chairs are going to be so high, right? It's a policy, code, when you're going upstairs. Stairs, risers are supposed to be this long and that long, and if it's not like that for us, you know, you're like, you know, break your neck or something. So there are all kinds of policies. It's all over the place. Our dress code, tires in the car, whether you have a catalytic converter, etc.
It reminds me of, over the break, I was able to read the book on Catherine the Great, who came to power in the 1700s in Russia. And, you know, there were always coups the next person who came to power. But one of the things she did was the first person to really write down frames of reference and laws. Before that, it was kind of whatever the emperor said.
Yep.
Went on for those 20 years, and then there were no books that were written down. Most people couldn't read, but they talked about them, and the next person made up their laws.
No, I mean, and it's funny to think, when we're in such an age of standardization.
Right.
On the other hand, think about, I mean, there are times when there are a couple of things right now that I am really upset about because they're not standardized. I wish they would just standardize them so that we could be done with it, you know, and I can't think of what it is that is you know, said, but I will remember and share. Is there anything that you all are upset about that they're not standardized?
Yeah, talking about in common things that we use. Different stores have different way of processing your credit card. You press this button, press that button, and it's like okay, and all microwaves are different, and all you know, things are all so different. But we get used to commonality. Okay, you just want to go, you should be able to use it. And one more thing that Stephen said, when they implement this, I do know that there are consequences. Sometimes if you break these policies, speed limits, you don't wear your seatbelt. I mean, it's okay for you to drive once you get caught. There are consequences.
Well, and that's the regulatory policy that enforces the other policy, right? So the health policy is wear a seatbelt. And then the regulatory policy is, well, if you get caught not wearing a seatbelt, we will fine you. The cultural part of the policy is that you can have a policy that says you must wear seatbelts. Not everybody wears them. Or some people will put the seatbelt on the bottom and put the top one behind them. Or, you know, and so on and so forth. You know, so that's where, you know, like when you say, well, this is a policy, you have to implement it and, you know, or get out of town kind of thing. Yes, on the one hand, but we'll be reading an article that's very interesting about detention in New Haven. You know, this detention policy in New Haven schools, and sort of culturally how that does and does not work, and how people do and do not support it, etc.
Well, 2 or 3 years ago, the state implemented the new policy for first-time offenders in schools who haven't actually hurt anybody, you know, caught drinking or with weapons or whatever, to have in-school suspension as opposed to being automatically removed from school. So very few schools have actually taken on that state policy.
It's that policy that's this article.
And when I actually tried to talk to my board of ed about it, they're like, oh, we did that with ours. And I was like, we've had that policy for so long. I was like, oh, yeah, haven't.
No, you had the policy.
They had the policy with the guidelines.
But there's no analysis in that school.
But no, this is a new policy that says that first-time people who haven't heard, I mean, they do have parameters, but it was the pocket knife or It is really,
That's true. Hold on, one second, I wanted to say something. So I know that we talked about 9 o'clock. I started late, but would you indulge me 15 minutes? Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say probably the worst thing being a counselor we always see is I'll have a student come register and I won't say where they come from, but there's always one school that they come from and they'll have like 2 or 3 credits and they'll be a senior or junior. And it's the worst thing in the world to tell a kid that you have no chance of graduating from our school. So I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it, but it's always the same schools that come over to it. The kids come to us and they have nothing.
And so what are you saying?
You say you're going to be here for another couple
No,
of years.
but what are you saying about the policy of the school or?
It's not consistent, and I wish it could be consistent among schools. You know, you can't say graduation requirements should be consistent, but they really shouldn't. Because no, they're honestly.
Yeah, there are in the state of Connecticut. There's only baseline graduation.
We'll have kids.
Sure.
Yeah, the schools vary, and that's what kills it.
Class or whatever, it varies amongst the grade levels. So what he's saying is by the time they transfer to his school, if they didn't pick the minimum at a certain level, they're at the point of not meeting it on their 4 year. Because there's a graduate who has so many credits.
Right,
but
well,
there's
wouldn't that
no-
be there anywhere?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand why it's just in your school that
I
you're
think
saying.
some schools can go higher with their requirements.
Every school is different for graduation requirements. Like for instance, Wilkett, I give you Wilkett as an example. Wilkett only requires I think like 21 credits. We require 25. So we'll get kids that come in as juniors and seniors that don't have. I mean, granted, they can get I mean, the principal can always override it, but a lot of times when sophomores come in and they failed a lot of their freshman classes, they're still marked as sophomores. So they come to us, and we have no choice to make them sophomores, but there's no way they're going to become juniors. So that's my issue.
In terms of their course, their ability to approve the courses.
There's a big discrepancy, and especially it's credits mostly, but.
Now, I'm going to stop for a minute, if that's okay. Let's move on here. So we talked about policy study and policy analysis, right? Now, what about policy advocacy? This is this other arm, right, which is more of the NGO area. And what NGO, non-government organization, a lot of times. So, what? To not post because I think you guys are big. Oh. Is it true or are you making it?
Yeah, we know.
Okay. We are big kids, right? Yeah, operative word, right?
Oh, I went the other way. I was like, I'm a big kid. I can do it.
Here we go. So looking at Anderson, right? He talks about policy process or cycle. Right, the cycle. And then he talks about the different categories and stages. And we sort of went over these in the discussion of the table of content. And then I asked at the bottom, are these static? Are they flexible? Are they culture bound? What's up? Are they?
They may change at any step.
Yep, they can change at any step. But they do tend to be, like, for example, human beings, we largely have 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, most of us, right? Right, most of the time. But some of us don't have those things. And so, do you agree? I think it's very culture bound.
Yeah,
I think it is. I think you can.
about non-culture, that's what
Yeah, they did.
in Anderson, I didn't quite get where he was coming from there.
You were saying you could take these policies, the process
Cycle.
and apply it to other, like, you want to go to China and apply it to their one-child policy. That you could.
Oh, in terms of the active
Yeah,
process.
that's, he was kind of,
yeah.
he said at the end of one of them, that it could
The
be applied
culture
to
of sex.
But not the
culture
individual
effect,
policy.
yeah, but he's saying you could take it, and to take for one like that though, in the other classes that obviously like England that follows a very big separate thing, different things, blind way, so maybe something.
Well, I think it is true, and there may be different emphases, right?
Yeah.
And there also, I mean, what I do think is that we don't do enough comparative education or, comparative analysis in the United States. I studied in Canada briefly, and what I loved, at least in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, U.S. It is, especially New Zealand. New Zealand is unto its own. It really is. So he talks about policy as a relatively stable, purposive course of action or inaction. And I love that he puts in inaction, because I think that's really important for us to understand. By actors regarding a problem of concern. Concern to whom? Well, I mean, if you're focused on concerns, probably to people who have the power enough to be concerned about it. Or there are enough people to have a concern about it. And that's the business about numbers. So we talk about policy demands, concerns, and problems. And, there are policy statements that we make. We look for policy outputs. And we look for policy outcomes. So the outputs are the efforts that we're putting into the policy activities, right? And then the outcomes are what does it do? What did it do? What did the policy say? And the policy statement is early on in terms of what the policy is, and then how we're going to sort of formulate and implement the policy. So he talks about these various things. So these are the various categories that he had advanced. And when you look at it like this, I'll go ahead and post this one because it's fun. I put this together. We'll post it. When you look at it like this, it's strange because you get to think like, oh right, all of this is going on as I'm completing my taxes, as I'm trying not to speed on the highway, as I'm going for my annual checkup, or not. Is there anything here that just is, sort of, that you really hadn't thought about? Well, no, there is an outcome, right? I mean, there's an intended kind of cultural outcome, most likely. Can you think of an intangible, sort of a symbolic policy? Flag burning, right?
No, there was something else. Outlawing war.
What?
Outlawing war?
Outlawing war?
Yeah. Something, it was just a statement of the obvious.
Right. Religion.
They also put in that the Endangered Species Act is originally
symbolic,
but it's turning into
Well, so that's interesting. I mean, that idea that you can start with something symbolic, and then it can become more material. I mean, I would argue that a symbolic policy is probably a step, if you're strategizing and doing policy strategy, is probably a step towards, right? And that's one of the things that, you'll hear people say as they're trying to develop the policy agenda. Well, I think we need to put the panda on the endangered species list. And somebody's going to say, we're not ready for putting the panda on the endangered species. We need to do something a little bit more incremental, right? Teacher evaluation policy changes here. We're going to change teacher evaluation, and it's going to look like this, right? But you just can't do it that way. It's got to be much more incremental. So how do you do it? Start with maybe some symbolic things. Couple people get ruffled up. There are other ways, then you add on behind that some other things and changes, etc. The other way to do it is you make a policy that just blows a hole in everybody's perception. They're just like, and then you say, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. And move it back just a little bit, right? So that now people, because they are so upset at how big the hole in the wall is, you move it back a little bit, and you never would have gotten there from here, right? But because they feel that where you moved to is like so much better than that big hole in the wall, they're feeling fine about it. These are all strategies, right? So he talks about these various approaches, the various kinds of theories that we have about policy. you to necessarily, I won't quiz you on it, or I won't ask you to apply them in that way. When you have your projects, I do want you to be thinking about, oh, these are approaches, and I need to look through and see which one's the right one for what it is that I'm doing. Does that make sense? So, political, go ahead. Let's think about leadership, right? We talk about when you're a leader, you want to be a say you want to be a transformational leader. Well, one of the ways that you're a transformational leader is that you're a situational leader, right? Where you adopt different kinds of styles and strategies based on situation. I think that would be the same thing to say here, where you want to adopt the approaches that work. So you might want to adopt more a political systems theory and a group theory approach where you're working the group struggle and political system struggle at the same time, right? But, I actually think these approaches are more sort of philosophical underpinnings about what it is that you believe about policy. Some people really believe that it's all about, policy is really about power struggle, right? And then this elite theory, well, really if you want to change policy, you have to address issues of the hegemony of the governing elite, etc. I tend to be more of an institutional person. I think that our institutions matter a lot, but it's the people in the organization. So, and rational choice theory, I think is really interesting. I think it's useful on one level, but it's kind of limited. In rational choice theory, they say people make rational choices based on their economic interests. And, yes, we do. But there are times when we say, no, I don't want the money, I want the vacation days, right? And so that would not be, in rational choice theory, that would not be a rational choice. So therefore, it is not a rational theory.
Wait a minute, though, wouldn't that still serve your self-interest?
It would serve your self-interest, and it could be, it could be calculated in microeconomic terms because of the value of vacation days and microeconomic systems. So yes, it could be probably a bad example. But the point is that, it's not just about, say, the money. I mean, and that's partly one of the problems with, say, merit cases, right? Is that it's, on the one hand, we are trying to suggest, based on a rational choice theory notion of policy, that if you pay teachers more, they're going to, to do better, they will do better. But that doesn't necessarily play out in that way. So there are other things at play. That's not to say that it can't, because that can be an incentive. Okay, so so methods. Well, how do you do policy? These methods might be appropriate at any stage in the policy process. Qualitative methods, case studies, focus groups, in-depth interviews, etc. And quantitative methods of surveys, counting, numbers, statistics, etc. In public policy, we tend to favor quantitative methods as a result of the scientific method and the history on the one hand, and yet I would argue that sometimes the most compelling information that comes out is sort of more qualitative.
Now, in the other book, though, too, though, they start talking that we kind of give more historical perspective how it's changed.
Yes.
We're moving more towards a combination.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's really, I think that's very good. And that's why the third bullet is, you want to have, I think the best policy making takes place in this. You're clear about what theories you're drawing upon. You're asking the right questions for what it is that you want to do. So they're your politically and power-interested questions. Those are the right questions for you. And so as a result of those questions in your theory, you're gathering the appropriate types of data, and you're doing the appropriate types of analyses. And it all depends, all highly situational dependent on what it is that you're trying to do based on your experience. And in this case, it's like teach your own form. You should not be embarrassed about that, right? You do what you have to do because you need to do it. So So, I was gonna do this exercise today, but we'll do it next week, where pick a policy issue that needs a policy response, and how should it be approached, right? And then we say, what categories will you use or draw upon to address this policy? What approaches, what methods, what context? We'll do that in 2 groups, next week. So next week, we will meet at Yulee Library, and I'll supply some policy briefs for us to review within the week. And it's, let's see, I have some trouble posting stuff. Oh, I did post, did I talk to you about shitty first draft?
Yeah.
Okay, so I posted that, and it's in your general resources area. So that's there. That shouldn't take long to read. And I'll also post some policy briefs there, or a message that I'm not posting the policy briefs that they need to be done at Yulee. And I'll get my comments.
I just want to make sure, we just have to read at least 3 policy briefs that you posted.
Yes.
Familiar with them. And do the website?
No, the web class is going to be.
Oh, in class.
Yes, that'll be in class. And the policy brief, what I may do is I may end up, I have to talk with June, so I may end up having us just do something with the policy brief in class as part of the web quest. So I'll put a message on there saying I'm not posting the policy brief, we'll do it at Yulee. But I do want you to start like looking at policy briefs and so on.
Where can we find them?
I'm supposed to post them for you.
But is there other resources?
Potentially go to the state website?
You mean in terms of just finding policy briefs? Yeah, oh no, if you'd like to search for your own policy briefs to just see what they're about, just go to all kinds of the advocacy organizations I think are the best. And you just look like, what are they saying about a particular issue? Go to the gifted and talented people, see what they say about that, right? Go to, yep, so.
Sorry, you had posted, a web address on the,
Yes, that's for the
that's where you
tutorial.
want us to go and pick 3,
No, that's just a tutorial on how to use the library.
okay, so for
Yeah,
next
so you
week.
can look at that.
Okay, so it's just chapter 2, Anderson, and chapter 6, Fowler.
No, we're not that week.
You're a week ahead.
You're a week ahead.
Oh, I am.
Okay.
You're just making your book public.
All you are,
You
you're
want to
just
be a week ahead because in 2 weeks you have to read like 100 pages, so